G'day there, James here, and welcome to episode 5, season 2, comparing policies to principles, why a government can never work and what to do instead. So in this series we're looking at 263 government policies, all aspects of society, from prisons, consumer rights, gender transition, pensions, right to die, self-harm, everything. We're looking at all aspects of society. That's why this series is so important to watch in order and to watch all the videos. Because if you're missing any of it, the whole puzzle falls apart. You can't see the entire picture. Because this series is all about comparing every single policy to the principles of objective morality to see whether it's right or not. Because that is a fundamental truth. That's one of the most important questions every single human being must, not should, must be dedicated to. And not even just so they can be a good man or woman, but so they can live in a better, objectively better world for themselves, for their own selfish, egoic desires and interests. Because when people treat other people badly, the world spirals down as a whole. When people treat each other better and do things right, objectively, according to an unbreakable, immutable code that is decipherable from reality itself and our conscious, rational, reasonable minds, everything gets better. So, in this video today, we're going to be looking at prisons and then comparing them to rehabilitation centers. I'm going to be reading out a couple policies here, and then we're going to be watching a video I've cut together from a few ones I found online, looking at the best rehab centers in the world from Norway and Finland, and seeing what works and why it works, and being able to use your own mind to understand and cognize the truth, the simple truth, and to change your perspective. If you're someone that has viewed punishing criminals as the only way, the first resort, that's the way we should go about it. If your perspective doesn't change by the end of this video, it's a guarantee that you're a psychopath. And what can I do for you? I can't do anything to help you. I can only help normal, healthy people who have been indoctrinated into believing garbage. Some argue that providing the minimum number of bare, cold cells is the only provision that needs to be made for those who have broken the law. Others suggest that spending more money allows for prisoners to be rehabilitated as well as punished and reduces the chances of reoffending. So this is wrong. The system we need to use is the R method. Rehabilitation, remedy, resolution, rectification. A lot of good words that start with the letter R. Why? I don't know. It just is. Instead of using punishment, vengeance, revenge, and torture. These elements could be understandable on an individual to individual basis, but definitely not for a professional organization that is detached from the crime at hand, not connected to it. They should be working in a professional manner. If you'd walked in and your daughter was being raped right in front of you, or your lover was being murdered, or some other terrible atrocity, sure, it's understandable that you fly into a fit of rage and you want to stab that person to death and kill them and you want revenge straight away. Sure, that's understandable, right? But we're not talking about that. We're talking on an organizational, professional level, where the system is managed by professional judges and arbitrators who work in that system every day. That's their profession. And they're detached from that event. It's not their partner who was murdered or raped. They're there to oversee and fix the problems that arise in society, because we need to enact justice. Why? Well, what is justice? It's the act of curing and correcting crimes and criminal behavior, fixing criminals, making them better again. Because the only reason people are going to commit crimes is because of mental health issues, or because the system is just so downright evil it forces them to commit crimes to survive. But most of the time, it's just because of mental health issues. So why do we think it's okay to hurt people who have mental health issues? No one's going to rape anyone if they're not fucked up in the head. How likely is it that someone's going to murder their wife or beat up their girlfriend? That's just absolutely insane. No normal person does that, ever. It's an impossibility. Only mentally disturbed and afflicted people would ever do such a thing. So why do you think it is okay and even necessary and noble to punish, torture and harm these people? you're just as sick as them, if not worse, because you're apparently from a sound state of mind. So that's the way we need to totally change the way we look at these things, because then there's no difference between you and I, or you and the criminal. You're just as bad as the criminal. You're even worse than if all you want to do is hit them over the head and lock them in a cell for years and years and years. That's just plain evil. Attempting to say that a system of punishment is a good system that punishes those who commit cruel crimes with even crueler crimes is just bizarre, warped, and nonsensical. It's totally detached from reality. It shows that someone isn't in objective reality and isn't using their faculty of reason or bringing their awareness to the facts. Hey, hold on, let me think about this. That's actually a bad thing to do. That doesn't solve anything. It just makes me able to enjoy my own sadistic tendencies. You go, well, hold on, if I want to do that, what's wrong with me? My goodness. We can't commit greater crimes to correct lesser crimes. It's totally contradictory and illogical. No one deserves to be tortured and imprisoned. Not even police or politicians. And sure, in some circumstances, people may deserve to be killed outright. Like if you walking home and, yeah, there's that rape or murder going on and you just need to kill them outright. Okay, some of those examples, sure, they're defendable. We can argue that there should be a better way, but in that situation, yeah, there are mitigating circumstances, which are understandable. Even the act of murdering or raping someone is nowhere near as cruel or evil as locking someone in a cell to be tortured for days, weeks, months, years, decades. Can you even imagine what that would be like, to have your freedom taken away and to be tortured in those places? Obviously, the people who are dishing out these punishments and who are working at these facilities, who are in the police, they have no empathy. They're totally thoughtless and have no consideration or compassion or understanding or even grounding in reality. Can they even feel pain and pleasure themselves? Because if you're able to feel pain, how can you possibly ever justify inflicting torture on another human being like that? It's outrageous, especially when it's on a professional, enormous scale. It takes a lot more calculated and considered thought to torture and imprison someone and millions of people than it does to murder or rape someone. Much more thought and consideration. Most of these criminals who do bad things, they've got mental health issues and they can't control themselves. It's not excusing their actions, but it is understandable. They need medical attention for acting out of character. And why do I say out of character? Because those people weren't working for government. They weren't in the police force. They weren't a banker. And what's the difference there? Well, those people have to work every single day to be evil. It's a concentrated effort to evade the truth of objective reality and morality, to do the wrong thing second by second, day by day, month after month, year after year. That is true evil. These people who are just normal people and then they have something break inside their mind and they kill someone or they rape, they're not working to be evil. They don't deliberately plot and scheme and plan and backstab. They're just average people who have a mental health issue. They don't live a purposeful life which is dedicated and committed to inflicting the maximum amount of harm and torture on people they don't even know. Those very rare cases where you get those psychopaths who become serial killers and they might kill 70 people, and then you get the real serious psychopaths who find positions in government and police and military who kill thousands, hundreds of thousands and millions of people. They're the professional level criminals. Most of the petty crimes are committed by people against other people they know. It's when people start killing and harming people they don't know, which it starts getting more serious, because it shows, wow, there's a far serious mental concern happening there. It's exactly what the current courts, police and government do. They premeditate and consider their evil. They formally organize how to inflict the maximum amount of harm upon people they have never met. They have whole councils, organizations and teams dedicated to figuring out the best and most effective way to inflict cruelty upon the general population. And their only excuse, the professional criminals, the real evil people, their only excuse for doing what they do is that they believe they're superior. And why do they believe they're superior? Because they can do what they do and get away with it. They're able to convince the masses they torture to clap and cheer when they're being tortured. So that's why these evil people believe they have the right to do what they do to the masses, because the masses beg to be punished. This is sick on both sides, those who have been so easily hoodwinked to beg for their own torture and imprisonment, and it's just as sick those people who want to torture and imprison those people who are begging for it. I don't know which side's more sick. Probably the side that's clapping and cheering to be tortured. That's even worse. But it doesn't make it right. It's still absolutely wrong objectively, and it's not the real nature of who we are. Sure, it's the nature of psychopaths because they're physically broken. They're missing part of their brain, their mind system. Just their mental acuity is half of it's gone. They don't have the actual faculties to be able to be normal. And what I mean by normal, a natural, complete, whole human being. Because when we look at the scale, the magnitude of the evil committed by these professionals compared to the amateurs, an amateur who might kill a family member or kill a random stranger or do something that's still terrible, of course, but compared to the professionals, governments, bankers, police, courts, they are literally billions of times more evil and more heinous what they do. And that's on the minimum scale. Realistically, they're in the trillions of times more evil. And what metric am I using to measure that? The amount of people that are being harmed. Because a random murderer might kill 1 or 2 people, rape 1 or 2 people. Sure, that's a terrible crime to commit to someone, but what the government and this evil system does, they affect 7.5, however many billions of people are living in the world. So that's why I'm saying that's a minimum level of how many times worse this system and the people who play in that system, how many more times evil they are than the average crook. Billions at the bare minimum. And then we need to look at every single evil way they affect our lives. The hundreds of different ways your life is affected every single day because of the impositions that are enforced against you with a threat of execution if you do not obey. I know that is far worse than being worried about a random crook who may murder you on the streets. Having a gang of thousands of people working together to create the most evil system humanity has ever conjured is billions to trillions of times worse. That is the real problem. But still, we need to focus on those basic low-level criminals as well, because that's what the population has been hoodwinked into believing is such a huge concern that they're willing to empower a system which is trillions of times worse. It's mind-blowing. They're willing to fuel a system trillions of times worse to protect them. If that's not the definition of madness, then what is? Such a huge problem. The real criminals never got locked up. They're the ones who designed the system of locking people up. Even then, the evil that these people commit, the police, the politicians, the bankers, anyone working in government, I don't care if you're working just selling registration or you're working at the ATO as a paper pusher, you are 100% still working for evil. That is absolutely inexcusable and it's not understandable. There is no excuse for me doing something like that because you are working for a terrorist organization trillions of times worse than a petty murderer. But that's why you're watching this video, to become a better person and to stop committing crimes and to become the best version of yourself, to understand the truth of how the world really works, what's wrong, what's right. Those evil criminals still deserve to be rehabbed. They at least deserve the chance, and we deserve the chance to try to fix them. And if we can't fix them, so what we do is we offer them the chance to stay inside the rehab facilities, to live out their rest of the days in relative comfort, because we don't need to lower ourselves to their level to build a better world. That actually just continues their world, doesn't it? Or we can offer them death, because there's a lot of people who are living in prisons today and they would much prefer to be killed. That's why a lot of them spark violence, is so they can get killed in retaliation. But sometimes it can be very difficult if you're living in isolation and you don't even have anything in your cell to be able to kill yourself with. Not even a sock to hang your neck. Now that's bloody torture. And if you'd watched the last video, which I hope you have, we all have the right to die. So if someone was a true psychopath, like anyone who was a premier or prime minister, president, or police commissioner or whatever, and they were in one of these rehab centers, and after years they couldn't be rehabbed and there was nothing we could do to help, and they didn't want to live anymore because they were never going to have their freedom to be an absolute menace to society anymore, and they preferred death. Yes, we can do that then, because that is the morally right thing to do, to respect their wishes and to put them out of their misery. But that's the point here. We need to look at principles. Even when it comes to psychopaths, the worst of the absolute worst, we still need to treat them well. Because what's the alternative? What are we going to do? Become them? Become the police? Become the worst of the worst? Punish them? Torture them? Treat them with absolutely no humanity and as much cruelty as we can imagine? Whoever thinks and believes that sounds exactly like a psychopath themselves. And it will just be a matter of time before they find themselves locked up. And when they do, would they want to be tortured or cared for? Supporting torture, being a supporter, is the same wavelength as being a torturer yourself. What's the difference between wanting to punish crimes and committing a crime? If you want to punish, hurt and harm others, you can see how easy it was for someone else to slip up and act out their darker urges. You're really the same, and the only difference between you and them is that you haven't acted out yet. If you want to harm those who have caused harm, it shows that you're the same as them. Human. Yet as a human, you have a choice to act out your worst nature or your best. And who do you really want to be your neighbour? Because many criminals aren't stuck in prison for the rest of their lives. They're just stuck in there for a long, long time, 25 years. When they leave, who would you prefer to be your neighbour? Someone who was tortured in prison for 25 years because they murdered someone? Or someone who went to a rehab centre for 2.5 years to fix their mental disabilities, which had caused them to murder someone in the first place, who had undergone effective mental health recovery programs to become the best version of themselves? Who would you want living next door to you? The one who was tortured or the one who was recovered? It's a no-brainer. So a defense for those who want to punish evil people. They might say that, hey, hold on, I only want to punish people who have committed evil. I don't want to go harming innocent people who haven't caused any harm to others. I just want to punish and hurt those who have hurt and harmed others. So we need to really consider, those people who did harm others, were they mentally afflicted, or did they really know what they were doing? Did they deliberately choose to hurt and harm innocent, good people? Or was it just an uncontrollable urge that overtook them? And the difference between the amateur criminals and the professional criminals is that the professionals think they're right when they do these evil things, and they think they have the right. When you look at the behaviour of police, judges, magistrates and politicians, they think they are good and righteous for committing the evil they do on a daily basis. And they think they have the right. They think they are morally superior and not just above the law, they think they are above reality, which you could look from a religious point of view as above God. That's from their point of view, because they're all subjectivists. They have to be to believe that nonsense, because they're totally detached from objective reality. Because when you understand, hold on, there is an objective reality, reality is real and it does exist, it is what it is, You learn this by learning objectivism, the philosophy which teaches you the truth of what actually is. Subjectivism is the opposite of objectivism. It's, hey, whatever I want is the truth. That's just the way things work. Whatever I want, whatever I fancy. Which is the opposite to reality. So then, would you be justified in causing harm to these really evil people? Maybe, maybe not. What do you think is going to happen if you keep on going down that track and want to harm them? There's a possibility you're going to become just like them. It's best if we do everything we can to fix everyone. Whether it's the amateur mugger all the way up to the professional cop. We need to do the best we can to fix little bit evil to all the way past the devil evil. Because then we know we've done everything we possibly can to help those who deserve our help. A point I'd like to note here is that in times of war, things are different. That's a totally different video we'll talk about at a later stage. But we're talking about a period of time in society that is working as a natural, healthy, normal functioning society that is not at war. What is the real appropriate, true method for treating and curing criminals? Alright, with that being said, we've talked about a lot of the morality here, the principles of morality, how we actually, what we really want to do, whether we know it or not, is do the right thing. And jumping to the conclusion that punishing and hurting is the right thing is wrong. I hope I've shown you that. Now we're going to look at what the best countries in the world are doing with their rehab systems, with Norway and Finland. This won't be a comprehensive dive into exactly what these systems are doing, but it's going to be a general bird's eye view so you can see what actually works, because that's what we want to do at the end of the day, isn't it? We want to use systems and methods that actually work. And what does that mean? Produce less crime, have less criminals, be less afraid of having crime committed against you, living in a more peaceful, safe, respectful society. That's what we want, unless you're working in government. That's the absolute opposite of what you want. With that being said, all right, let's crack into it.
Staying in a maximum security prison is not a normal life, but that's also an ambition, to reduce the feeling of being in a prison as much as possible.
And in here you have my cell. So I have DVD and movies from there.
The basic question that we ask ourselves in Norway, what kind of neighbor do we really want?
It's not for the prison to judge or to punish. We have to interact and be human. I think it's as simple as that.
The most important thing is how we treat people. This is the 4 key elements that I would like you to remember. The principle of normality, the focus that we have in Norway on humanity inside prisons, what we call dynamic security, and the emphasis that we put on reintegration into society.
Here we have a real toilet with a shower and everything. You know, you can see everybody have their key, so they can open or close the doors whenever they want.
Look beyond the facilities. It's not the most important thing.
And here we have the kitchen, where I used to prepare the food. You can see here, it's inside here.
That's a really important principle in Norway, which talks about that taking someone's liberty away and taking them away from their family, away from their community, that in of itself is the punishment. So life inside prisons should look as normal to life in the community as possible.
And in here, you have this washing room. You can wash the clothes. You can wear whatever you want.
But that's also an ambition, to reduce the feeling of being in a prison as much as possible. That's the normality principle.
Stores where an individual actually gets to go to a real store and pick out commissary items. I think that's a good adds to the normalization.
We think this is the most important part. Dynamic security sounds like a very fancy thing, but it's really just having a normal interpersonal relations between the officers, or all staff really, and the inmates. That was the ambition, from guard to also be a social worker. The main subjects at the academy: ethics, psychology, communication technique, criminology, law, human rights. Of course, they do learn self-defense, they do learn extraction techniques, they do learn to work as a team, but that's not, that's not the major components. It's about how do you treat people respectfully.
My family always think that I just play games, because that's why I like very much to play games. So I often play cards and stuff with inmates.
I know in some states it's forbidden and will have consequences for you if you interact with inmates as a staff member. Quite the opposite here. We expect and demand an interaction between staff and inmates.
It's kind of friendship with someone, and to see the progress and see the changes, that's the best with the job.
The contact officer is, for example, sitting down with you and making you a future plan. So what for steps by steps to become a free man.
From day one?
Yeah.
Photos of my daughter, big love of my life.
We can create walls between us, but that doesn't help anything.
Without approaching people with respect and dignity, it's impossible to sit down the next day and talk about his future, because he will not have any trust in you. So in order to work well with reintegration and future planning, etc., there has to be a foundation there of trust between the staff and the inmates.
There's a no shoes policy.
No shoes policy, so I have to put on some slippers because we like to keep it clean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you show me around?
Yeah, of course.
What do you like about this house?
I love my grill.
It felt like we were visiting somebody's house for the first time, and they were excited to show us around.
So this is your room?
This is my room.
Wow, it's big.
Yeah.
Got your TV.
TV, DVD.
Yeah.
Computer, closet, clothes. I have my own sheets, everything,
How's the bed? Comfortable?
Yeah, but the bed is comfortable. Sit.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's like a college dorm.
Except it's not. This is a minimum security prison in Norway called Bolstøy, where Dardan is serving a 1-year sentence for drug trafficking.
I have my washing machine, my dryer, and I have my shower. Brand new. Boom.
So these are heated floors.
These are heated floors. You guys have another view on prison. You're like really punishing these people. It's like they're animals.
In Norway, prisoners have keys to their own bedrooms, fully furnished living rooms and kitchens with sharp knives to cook with. There's 5-star cooking classes, painting, and they even have a fully equipped recording studio.
Do you feel like this is prison?
Your freedom is taken from you, you cannot go to the store, you cannot see your children when you want. Of course, I'm still in prison.
We want them to have a normal life. We punish them by taking away their freedom, but we don't take away their life.
In Norway, there's no such thing as a lifetime sentence, so they believe prison should look and feel like everyday life.
The prison system isn't there to inflict pain and be punitive, but is to actually try to get that person to be a better citizen.
In Norway, this is Halden Prison, and it's the second largest maximum security prison in Norway. And it looks more like a resort than anything else. But at 20%, Norway's recidivism rate is the lowest in Scandinavia and one of the lowest in the world. This is how Norway changed how we think about incarceration. While Norway's 2-year recidivism rate is the lowest in the world, America's is one of the highest. A 2014 study found 67% of American prisoners released in 30 states were rearrested for a crime within 3 years, and 75% were rearrested within 5 years. Norway has 2 of what's been called the most humane prisons in the world. One of them is Halden Prison, where prisoners can garden, learn to cook, and tend to animals. They can also take vocational classes and prepare themselves for the outside world after their release. America's decades-long war on crime has resulted in 159,000 people currently serving life prison sentences. But in Norway, almost all prisoners are released. The maximum sentence is 21 years. At the end of this term, 5-year increments can be added indefinitely if it's assessed that the prisoner has not been rehabilitated. As of 2014, just 0.08% of Norway's population was behind bars. That's 75 per 100,000 people. In the US, it's 707 for every 100,000 people, or 0.7%. Nelson Mandela said, "It is said that no one truly knows a nation until one has been inside its jails. A nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but by its lowest ones." If that's the case, Norway should definitely be applauded for its humanity.
These photos look like they're from a hotel or a fancy college dorm room. There's a gym, common areas, and private bedrooms. But this place, just outside Halden, Norway, is a prison. There's no barbed wire, lots of greenery, and striking contemporary art. Inmates even have pretty great views out of their cell windows. It's all part of a plan to make prisons more humane through design. The underlying philosophy behind humane prison design argues that the look and feel of a prison shouldn't be a punishment.
The sentence is taking away the freedom. Everyday life shouldn't be a sentence.
And the first thing designers focus on is the basic architecture of prison buildings. In most prison architecture, facilities are consolidated into one contiguous building. A courtyard design uses a rectangular building around a central outdoor space. In a telephone pole design, rows of buildings are stacked like a ladder, and radial designs have corridors that branch out from a central hub, like spokes on a wheel. While these layouts are good for moving lots of inmates around efficiently, they restrict prisoners to identical indoor hallways day after day, and tight quarters can unintentionally create tension and conflict. So humane prisons are often laid out in a campus design, where facilities are split between separate buildings with a surrounding perimeter wall. At Norway's Halden prison, housing is located here, while education and visitation spaces are here, in separate buildings. This means most inmates have to start their day with a commute, mimicking life in the outside world and providing easy access to outdoor physical activity. And unlike other layouts, which have windows that look out onto the prison itself, campus design gives inmates a rich view of their surrounding environment. Plus, the grounds of humane prisons are usually landscaped carefully. At Halden, tall birch and pine trees dwarf the buildings and obscure the perimeter wall, lending what designers call an anti-authoritarian feel to the campus. Inmates are never made to feel intimidated by the architecture itself. Building materials influence humane design too. In other prisons, interiors are made from hard materials like concrete, linoleum, and steel. Materials like this block light, are visually unappealing, and constantly reflect noise. In prisons like Halden, you'll see glass to let in natural light, and materials like cork and wood to muffle noise. But humane prison design isn't just about architecture and materials. It's also about what happens inside the walls. Halden's design affects the way correctional officers and inmates interact. Because housing is broken up into small communities with a shared kitchen and communal space, correctional officers can easily monitor inmates through regular face-to-face contact, instead of observing large groups of people from a distance. And the guards' rooms are intentionally designed too small to incentivize them to move out into the inmates' common area.
And this, that the guards are together with the inmates, is a very important security system.
Campus layouts help that relationship flourish. A study of architecture in Dutch correctional facilities found that campus design ranked highest in inmate-staff relationships. And US prison studies from the late 90s found that this style of direct contact resulted in fewer violent or security-related incidents.
It's so important to have a human behavior towards the people, so they are not so angry, but give them human dignity.
It might feel counterintuitive to create pleasant, well-designed spaces like this for people who have committed crimes. But under a design philosophy like this, being imprisoned is the punishment. The architecture doesn't have to be.
This man is serving a life sentence for murder. A dip in the frozen lake behind the prison is part of his regular workout routine.
No problem. It's okay.
Welcome to life in one of Finland's open prisons. There are no cell blocks here, just dormitories. Inmates come and go in their own cars. When Matti isn't at the nearby university campus, he's in his dorm room, studying for a career in tech.
Some entrepreneurship books, marketing books, user experience, all kinds of digital and IT studies.
And we have this kind of normality principle that prisoners should be treated equally even though they are prisoners, but they should have access to same services and rights as other citizens.
And the incarceration rate here is one of the lowest in Europe, a quarter of what it was in 1950. Today there are fewer than 3,000 in the Finnish prison system. The number of people behind bars in the US is equal to half of Finland's total population. For Matti, the road to reform has led him to a career that he would never have dreamed of before. Connected with Reactor, a digital agency that designs online education courses. Seeing him in this meeting, it's easy to forget that Matti is still serving out his sentence for murder. In that time, he hopes to complete a university degree and start a business.
One way to get kind of like employed is, of course, self-employment. So, and a lot of prisoners have already the entrepreneurial mindset.
Based on Matti's recommendations, Reactor is planning to add an entrepreneurship course to the prison curriculum.
It has like enforced my trust in also like this Finnish prison system, where like giving chances to put people like you, like it's awesome.
That looks like either an Xbox, DVD player, all these DVDs. Where do they get that from? Because in the current system, the taxpayers would have to pay for all this. And no one wants to pay for a murderer to have an Xbox in prison, right? So the way that system would work is that the people work inside these rehab facilities, because who's going to pay for these rehabilitation recovery programs? You only want to use donations as a last resort. Taxation is never the answer to forcefully rob people, committing crime to fix crime. It's just so mind-blowingly contradictory. It's impossible. How do you even comprehend that people fall for that and think that's the right way anything can ever work? Anyway, the way this is funded is from people working. They can work in the mechanical workshop. They can work farming fruit and veggies. They can have their own online business, an online store inside the rehab center. Whatever there is available for the work to be done to produce money by offering value to other people, because that's what work is, right? You need to offer value. You can't just steal and be a Robin Hood. You need to provide value to other people that they're willing to voluntarily exchange currency for value. The same is true for inside these places. They just get the basic amenities, and then if they want an Xbox, they want a DVD player, they want a computer, they want internet, they want to buy a movie online, whatever it is, they need to work and earn that money inside the facility, which then pays for the staff, the security guards, the social workers, to help them and take them through these rehab systems, and it pays for the electricity and everything else that the facility needs to operate and also make a profit for the entrepreneurs who are running these private businesses, because you can't have it as a public system, because public just means monopoly, and you can't do that. So it has to be privatized, and entrepreneurs who want to help the community, help create a better world, and who want to make money at the same time, helping people get back on track and being a productive, responsible member of society again, these entrepreneurs will create businesses like this. And they will need to think of systems exactly like this, so it doesn't require people to be forced to pay for these rehab centers, and it doesn't even require charity and donations. You can have that, that'll be a last resort though. You want the people working inside so they can fund their own stay. A lot of these terrible prisons nowadays, the people are offered an opportunity to work in there, but they're doing mundane, terrible tasks that machines could do. So you want healthy work and a variety of different work so people can learn skills and come out better on the other end when they leave. So you can see they leave them with knives. You can see a knife in the background there, so they're trusting them. They're giving them responsibility. Obviously, you probably won't have someone who is severely mentally unstable and who just murdered a whole bunch of people, who's just come out of the police force or something. You wouldn't let them in a room yet with a whole bunch of kitchen knives. You'll work them up there, get them more stable, get them recovering, and then let the recovering police officer be in a room where there are knives and then teach them how to cook and not to use the knife to threaten anyone in the room. So the point of taking them out of society shouldn't be to punish them. It's to protect the rest of society because this person has a mental disability. And I say disability because it is a disability. To be severely afflicted to the point where you're lashing out and stealing and breaking the law, LORE, committing crimes and treating people, violating the golden rule of equity, treating people in ways that you wouldn't want to be treated. You're mentally disabled at that point. You need to be recovered, healed, and you need to get better. So it's not about punishment, it's about protecting the rest of society, putting you, the criminal, in a safe place so you become better. So you wouldn't be selling a lot of this junk. Well, the way I'd run one of these rehab centers, you should not, because nutrition and health is paramount to having a healthy mind. Unhealthy body, unhealthy mind. Healthy body, healthy mind. There's a big link there. So you can have stores allowing people to buy extra food and having a larger variety, because maybe someone who just comes into the rehab center has zero money, so they have their basic simple food provided for. And then once they start earning money and working inside the facility, which is that normality principle, treating them just like they're in the normal outside world, but there's walls, right? Allow them to go to these facilities inside, and that's another way the rehab center makes profit, okay, is by selling food and being basically a mini society, a mini town in this rehab center. But you can't go selling them chips and chocolate and processed artificial crap, because that's just going to affect their mental health. I can absolutely attest to that. I've been in a mental health hospital once because I've suffered, if you've watched the last video, from drug abuse, smoking way too much weed. And I can attest to the fact that eating shitty food messes up your brain. From my own experience and seeing the other people inside that facility as well, the way they were responding to the food is terrible. You need to have healthy food. So that is a very important note. So that's the difference here. The guards here are actual real people, whereas the guards in prisons in Australia or America are more evil than the people they're guarding, because the amount of intense energy and the mental focus to go into being a guard in those places is just terrible. It's almost as bad as being a cop. It's an evil thing to do, to guard people. Most of those people who are locked in prison haven't actually committed a crime. They're in there because they smoked a joint or they sold a joint, or they didn't want to pay their taxes. They didn't want to get robbed by a monopoly. And yet people are guarding them and keeping them held hostage and torturing them. Those people are far more evil. They don't deserve to be locked in the cells and tortured themselves, but they need to go to rehab centers like this to learn what it means to be a normal, healthy human. And I think this dynamic security idea is fantastic. So from day one, basically when the prisoner, the criminal first rocks up, they're saying, hey, what are you going to do when you get out of here? So they're already programming them to not stay in there. Because a lot of criminals, they go to prison for 20 years, they're out for one day, they commit a crime and they go back in there because they can't reintegrate into the normal world, which is bad for many reasons, right? Their productive abilities could be utilized in the real world with the rest of society, but they're not producing anything. They're just being a parasite, a scoundrel inside a prison. So that's a really great thing as well. So they're helping them to focus on the future. Hey, we want to get you back on track, to have purpose, to have a mission, a career in life from day one. And obviously that's going to depend on the mental stability of whoever's coming in there, right? But as soon as possible, that's a very good viewpoint and helps people want to get out. So if you want to watch these videos in full, I'll put the names of the videos in the description below and you can watch the full videos. They're not that long, maybe 10, 15 minutes each, but I've just cut all the best parts out and put them together. So the first prison was Halden Prison, which was a maximum security. This one, minimum security. Yeah, it's great. They're just riding around on a push bike. They've got actual houses they're staying in. But for drug trafficking, that's a non-crime. That's not something to go to prison for. That's ridiculous. But at least he's serving in style. And serving, what a horrible word to use in a situation like this. Recidivism just means reoffending. going to prison, leaving, and then going back. So how good is that? They're learning all these new skills in there. They're working, providing the rehab center with an income. They're earning money themselves to buy things inside the facility. They're repaying back the arbitration system for mediating the circumstances which the private security company brought that individual to the arbitration system, and then the judges are sending them off to rehab because that's what they've decided needs to happen in that specific situation. Though those aren't going to be big fees. It's just a fee for their time. It's not a fine. It's just a fee for the services offered by the private security to safely bring and escort them to the arbitration centres, for the arbitration staff to hear the cases, and then for private security to take them from the centre to the rehab facility. And all this stuff would happen in the matter of a day or a couple days, not over months and years like the current anti-justice systems do. Because if someone's committed a real actual crime, you don't want them hanging around in society. You need to get them help. Like today, the same day, a remedy needs to be established. You need a solution right now. Someone isn't rehabilitated, they just keep on staying inside the facility. And I don't think there should be sentence times like the arbitrator say, you need to go to the rehab center for 5 years or 10 years because you did this, or that's even worse. It's just, you're staying in there for as long as you need to. And a lot of the initial term lengths can be just as long as the courses are. Might be a 12-week course, 6-month course to rehab someone, to integrate them back into healthy society. This is all determined by professional psychologists who analyze and inspect the mental stability of the patient or the client or the guest. I think those terms are more appropriate than calling them an inmate or a prisoner. The guest, the clients. Actually, a patient is probably the most appropriate term when you really think about it, because they're a mental health patient. There's something going wrong with them. Obviously not the drug trafficker, because he hasn't done anything wrong, but people who have actually acted out, they're a patient. So the patients go in there, they're assessed by professional psychologists, and they have psychological support throughout their whole stay, because that's the point. They need that support. And then every day, essentially, the social workers who are the guards are checking in on them, reporting, building a file, a catalogue, and seeing how their behaviour changes day by day, week after week, months after months. And when that person is at the point that they're ready to go back into society, and this is determined by professionals, by experts, then they can be released. They don't need to stay in there anymore. And you can even have a process where you slowly integrate them back into society, like what happens with Finland. Yeah, these places should be viewed as a mental health hospital rather than a prison. A rehab centre should be considered a mental health hospital with patients rather than a prison with prisoners and convicts and inmates. It's a totally different perspective and mindset shift. So they didn't provide enough context here, because they make it sound like someone who's a murderer can just check in on the first day and then suddenly get a car and drive in and out of the prison to a university whenever they please. So there was no explanatory context there, but I'm assuming it doesn't work like that. That you stay inside the rehab facility for a certain amount of time until you can be trusted to leave and go to a university and come back, which is a really great way to reintegrate people. And that's actually what happened when I stayed at the mental health hospital. That's one thing they did, which was good. They allowed me time out with my family 3 hours a day. And then as I was proven to be trustworthy and to be healing and recovering my mental state, then it was overnight and then a couple nights away, and then I'd go back and check in. That's a great system to use with these patients who are in their process of recovery as well. But it just makes it sound like, hold on, that's not good. You're giving them back their own cars, go to university for a murderer. That doesn't sound right. But I'm sure that would be the context behind this situation. And if you noticed before, this guy is an entrepreneur now. He's inside the facility and he's got all these books. He's reading about all this business and sales, marketing and AI and technology. And that's really fantastic, because he will come out into society and make a difference. He's going to add a lot of value. He goes in as a murderer, comes out as an entrepreneur. That's what you want. You don't want people to go in as a murderer and leave as a mass murderer.
Enforced my trust in also like this Finnish prison system where like giving chances to put people like you, like it's awesome.
That's it. He's only murdered someone. He's only done one bad thing. It's not like being a cop or a politician where every single second of every day is committed to doing the wrong thing all the time. He fucked up once. Oh shit. Okay, now he's got to go through this system, get better again so he doesn't act out of control. So he's got control of his emotions and his choices and his actions, because these systems need to be private. Because even though those rehab centers we just looked at are fantastic, they're still being criminally funded because they're being paid for by blood money. We can't have that. We need to do it properly, professionally, without any Robin Hood principles happening here. Main points to take away from enacting justice and achieving a healthier, safer, more secure society for all of us is changing the mindset about punishing criminals and instead viewing them as mental health issues that need to be recovered. They're not convicts or prisoners, they're patients going to a mental health facility, a rehab center, to get better. Remedy, resolution, rectification, rehabilitation, not punishment, revenge, torture, vengeance. We need to change the way we think about things and understand the principles of objective morality. You can't commit a greater crime to correct a lesser crime. And then the way we fund and operate these systems is via the people themselves, the patients, paying for their stay by working inside the facilities. And if in the beginning these entrepreneurs who establish these facilities, because sure, they could cost a lot of money, the community can chip in, and I bet your guns that a large percentage of people would be happy to donate once to get these facilities established, up and running, to feel safer inside their own homes and streets and the towns that they live in. Because even today, they're somewhat comfortable to have guns pointed to their head and their pockets emptied to pay for systems that torture people and then make it more likely they're going to get murdered by these people who have been tortured, who have been released. So people will be happy to donate to these places if necessary. And the system to get people into these facilities is with private security companies, private arbitration systems, and then the private rehabilitation systems. All these facilities, organizations, teams, private capitalistic businesses, all working together. And the best systems, their ideas will spread. Just like Norway and Finland's ideas will start spreading around the world. What Portugal did with their drug reformation and rehabilitation, those ideas will spread around the world. The people who build the best reputations for achieving the best results and being effective and efficient in their approach to solving problems, those ideas get spread, get copied, and that's why you don't have intellectual property rights, is because the best ideas can then easily be copied, implemented, and increase the quality of living everywhere in the world. And when you travel like I do, that's a very important thing. So everywhere you go in the world is equally as awesome. That's what we want. That's the world we're working for. That's the end of this episode. In the next episode, we're going to be looking at age of consent laws. Man, is this going to be a touchy one for some people? But I have a really good argument explaining objectively what the right and objective approach is to this law and situation. So find out in the next episode. Stay tuned and I'll see you there. Bye-bye.